Hey guys, time for a little bit of show and tell, I think. So I've been making a paddle and I have not been filming it because 4 years ago I did a pretty detailed video where I made this paddle for myself. And this is you can watch that video. I'll throw it, I'm probably pointing the wrong way. I'll throw a card up in the corner. You can watch that video. I've used this now. I mean, I'm not a hardcore paddler. I take a vacation once a summer where I like to get out, and then maybe I'll do a few other little jaunts. So this has seen a certain amount of use. It's doing really well for me. I quite like it. I put fiberglass around the tip, which I think has been helpful. But anyways, I've done a paddle making video, so I wasn't going to do another paddle making video. So let's just call this a bit of show and tell. I thought I'd show off. So this is a purchased paddle. I bought this one 10 years ago. This is my wife's paddle. We bought it about 10 years ago. And what's interesting about this is it has this kind of a paddle handle grip on it. I've only made symmetrical grips up until this point. And if you want to get into canoe paddle making, the grip is what I struggle with the most. This was my previous paddle, and every time I think I get a little bit better with the grip. This one is still kind of a blocky sort of feel to it. This one I've really liked. It's funny, I can tell it's a little bit, I'm exaggerating, but it's a bit like this. It's a bit asymmetric, but like here, where my thumb fits under, I really like that, and I can flip the paddle and I can do it the other way and it still feels nice, and then the curve over the top, and then the front to back curve fits my palm. I mean, I've paddled a lot of kilometers with this, so I think I was finally getting to the point. But my wife really likes this. She likes being able to put her hand like this, or sometimes she'll put her hand like this, just sort of she gets a really different position for fatigue. And so she's never wanted me to make her a paddle because I'm like, I'm not sure I can do that. That looks tricky. But earlier this summer, we were out paddling and I'm in the back of the canoe and she's in the front, and I was watching her and I was like, it felt like her paddle wasn't long enough. Didn't look like she was getting a full depth paddle stroke. And so I said, you know what, I think I should make you a paddle. And so that's what I'm show and telling, because I have been making my wife a paddle, and I sort of took the blade on this paddle and I tried to replicate the grip on this paddle. Now, I didn't make the handle any longer, I made the blade longer. So if you look at the two side by side, I've got the grip to here, and then you can see I basically wanted to add about 4 or 5 inches onto the paddle blade. But here we have, I've been working on this for like the last 3 evenings. I've been shaping, and you can cut it off, but you can't put it back. So I've been very hesitant. Every time I took it to a saw, it's like, I need to cut a little bit more off on the bandsaw, or I need to take it on the belt sander with the 40 grit and do some heavy grinding, and up and down the stairs, try it in my hands, try it in her hands, and yeah, it's I can understand why if you go buy a paddle, you're spending at least $100 for a decent paddle, because if you want to do this for a living, you're going to have all kinds of jigs and custom milling and so on. I don't have any of that. I draw lines and cut it out with a bandsaw, and then I do a lot of work with you see it back there, my belt sander. I do a lot of shaping with that, and then just a lot with the hand plane. But anyways, as I said, I've already done a video on that. Go watch that one. I just wanted to show this, and we're going paddling in a few weeks. In a few weeks, we're going up to Algonquin Park, and I plan to take my GoPro along, and so I will hopefully shoot a little bit of footage showing this in action. And so we'll have a little bit of a show and tell from the northern part of Ontario. But for now, I need to get the fiberglass on this paddle and get it ready to go. So hopefully this next scene is me up in the country. Well, hello from Phipps Lake in Algonquin Park. Thought it was time for a shop update. Now I just have the GoPro here, so the audio is probably not going to be the greatest, but it is what it is. And it's also kind of windy, so I see it blowing the camera around. I'm going to go handheld and we will see how that goes. So it is the 16th of September and it is a windy but beautiful day here. This is about our third day in the park. We were hoping for a nice, warm, late summer sort of trip, but we're actually having kind of an early fall kind of trip because it's actually been chilly. I'm layered up a fair bit. But anyways, let's talk about woodworking, because that's why you guys are here, really. This is the paddle, my paddle. I made this in 2016, still using it, still think it looks great. Hand grips are a real challenge, but I think I've got a good one that works well. This is my wife's new paddle. I just finished it like shortly before the trip. I can still smell the finish curing on it. This is a strip of walnut down the middle, 2 strips of ash, and in the blade here I've got cherry, and then I got a bit of padauk, and then a bit of maple. Up here, this is an asymmetric hand grip. Again, walnut down the middle, ash. This is just a touch of white oak, a few white oak scraps here, and then cherry across the top. And fairly comfortable. I don't remember everything that I said in the shop, because I recorded some in the shop beforehand, but this was the purchased paddle that was my wife's, that she really likes this asymmetric grip. And we wanted something with a longer blade, because I was noticing that her blade wasn't going as far into the water, so we're trying for something for more efficient. So the handle is basically the same length, and the blade we made longer. So surprisingly, my wife is noticing that. She's like, it's taking more effort for paddling. Like, yeah, because you're working harder. So it's only been like 3 days. The jury's still out. I might end up trimming the bottom part of the blade a bit narrower there. I've been watching a few other videos where they talk about how the top of the blade is maybe where you want more meat, if you will, because it's closer to your hand pushing the water. We'll see. Looks beautiful. She really wants to like it, but really, in the end, it's a tool and it has to work for her. So, we'll see. One of the things I love about being up here is you got the water, you got the trees, you also have the Canadian shield. The exposed rock is just something I find gorgeous. This is a fairly small lake. There's only 2 campsites on it, and there was nobody on the other campsite. In fact, let me hold the camera out. You can see maybe way down there the little orange marker that indicates the campsite. And there's the east on the lake, south, there's west. That's the direction we came from. Over there, that's where the beaver dams were, where it disappears into marsh, and then there's a portage to the next lake. That'll be our way out tomorrow. We are 3 days into a trip. Came in on Sunday, spent the night on one lake. Monday went to another lake. Tuesday we came here. Today's Wednesday, we're doing a rest day, so we're doing 2 days here, and then tomorrow we'll start heading out. So, on the one hand, it took us 3 days to get here, but you could probably do it in 1 day if you were really ambitious. We were not interested in a huge workout, so we're just taking 2 or 3 hours of paddling each day, fairly easy to get from one area to the next. It's been fairly quiet. Like today we saw 3 canoeists on the way out. It's September, people are back at school, and it starts getting cooler. I mean, it was 2 nights ago, it was probably around +2, +3 Celsius. It was quite chilly at night for sleeping. But yeah, we have down bags, so that's good. And so here I am back in the shop after an adventuresome trip, had a great time, and to answer the question, yes, I am cutting up my custom paddle carefully. Going to trim the blade down a bit. I'm going to take the blade from my wife's old paddle and I'm going to lay it here on top. It's roughly the width of the Paduke here, these Paduke stripes. I'm going to line it up. I've got the down at the other end, I've got the shaft lined up, and let's get the blade centered roughly. And I'm just going to take the pencil and I'm going to the tip is going to be different. This one has a blunter tip. I don't think I'm going to change that at this point. There's hardly any difference there. So take a little piece of strip here for a straight edge. Make sure my pencil lines are correctly nice and straight. Yep, that's good. So with the pencil lines double checked, I actually ended up erasing them and redoing them because I didn't think it was quite centered. With the pencil lines double checked, I'm going to take it over to the bandsaw and I'm going to trim it off, staying outside the line. And if you wiggle a bit when you're cutting, it's okay because I'll be using the hand plane to finesse it and get it true to the line. A jigsaw would work if that's all you have. I have a bandsaw. And then I'm back to the block plane and get it nicely straight. Yeah, so something happened to the microphone and I lost the audio here, but what I'm talking about is that after cutting it narrower, I realized that it's still too thick on the edge and I want to trim it, and I also just want to knock some weight off of the paddle. I struck a center line so I know what I'm aiming towards. I'm holding the plane at an angle to focus on making sort of a V wedge on the side. So 898, that's a lot better. Took off a good 40-50 grams, and that's from planing the edge. I took it down to a nice thin edge here. I planed basically all along here. I thinned the edge. And then in consultation with my wife, who had a few observations, I basically readjusted. I planed the entire shaft down a bit thinner, made it a little bit more comfortable for her, and so now it's time to finish it again. Now, unfortunately, I am immediately adding some weight back because I choose to fiberglass the tips for reinforcement, which I think is a good idea because they take a beating on the rocks and things, but it does add a bit of weight. Spread a thin coat of epoxy, take a piece of fabric, oops, and lay it in. And wrap these around to the other side. The fiberglass turns basically transparent as the epoxy soaks through it. So the fiberglass dried fairly nicely, and now I need to do some fairly heavy sanding. And now I'm going to touch up the finish with some spar urethane. Now, touching up is almost a, well, just a slight exaggeration because we're basically redoing the whole thing, but oh, that looks lovely every time. So a couple of coats of finish, and I take a Scotch-Brite to take off any little dust nibs or anything. Kind of silly to obsess that much because again, this is going to get stuffed in the water and banged against rocks, but you want it to look good to begin with. When I started this video, I really thought it was just going to be a little show and tell. I'd show the paddle off, I'd show you something in the park. Wasn't until we're, 3 days into the canoe trip that I realized that, yeah, the paddle needed some work to make my customer, my wife, happy. And so yeah, I cut up my paddle, narrowed the blade here, and really worked to make this thinner. And I'm really happy with how this turned out. This is really turned out great. So anyways, there we go. One beautiful custom paddle for my wife, and that's about it. As always, thank you for stopping by and spending some time in my shop. Hope you found something interesting or enjoyable, and we'll see you next time.